Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unfiltered Discussions. My name is Kelly, and I am being joined by Jenny and Beth. And you can see our smiling faces either here, if you're visually seeing us, or if you're listening to our voices. Certainly trundle over to our website at unfilteredbetdiscussions.com. We are also located on 4 different social media platforms. So you want 3 or 4? No, we're on YouTube. We are on
Facebook,
Yep, and
Instagram,
Instagram and
LinkedIn.
TikTok.
LinkedIn.
Oh, we're
Oh,
in TikTok.
5. Yeah, we're on TikTok. Hey, ladies, we're doing
I
Oh,
didn't
video short
know.
on TikTok and they're going viral. Just FYI.
oh,
Um,
nice.
so we're there. Yeah. So see, we all are getting to the party. And we're on various platforms like podcast platforms like Apple and Google, Spotify, the norm. Just sign up, like, follow us, you know the drill. So today we are talking about if you were on Google and somebody left you a Google review, what would you want it to say about yourself? And so we're going to give the hat tip to Jenny because she's the one who came up with this. And there's a history behind this question that you personally just lived a week ago, Jenny. So do you want to give our listeners a little background on kind of where this musing came about?
Yes, absolutely. So I recently lost one of my aunts, very, very cool lady, Judy. And we were at her funeral, and I have 21 first cousins, 23. I don't know. There's a lot of us. So, anyways, on this side of the family, a large number of cousins came. All of my Aunt Judy's, like family. It was the church said that it was the most that they've had since probably Christmas, in the church for this ceremony. So it was a very beautiful tribute to an awesome, awesome lady. And what I started to think about was when we read up on my Aunt Judy, it talked about the fact that she was a wife, she was a mother, she was a grandmother, she was a sister, an aunt. It talked about her jobs, what she had done. She was administrative assistant at a school forever. So, she really ran that school because that's how it's not really the principal or the superintendent, like the administrative assistants really run the place. And so they talked about those things and the impact that she had on people with that regard. After the actual ceremony, this was in the Midwest. I'm from Ohio originally, and so you all sit down and you have your spiced ham because that's what you have for funerals. I don't know why, and cheesy potato casserole. Like they're very traditional things that you have in the Midwest. So we're all eating our very unhealthy, fatty, delicious goodness. And we started telling stories about Aunt Judy. And no one mentioned then who she was to other people, right? So if someone says, Jenny, who are you? Well, I'm Simon's wife. I'm Tristan's mom. I'm Ruthie's daughter. Like I have these things that I am to other people. Or they might say, you know, who are you? Oh, well, I'm a practice manager at a busy vet practice, right? Like we start listing things that we are to other people, but not like who we really are. So as we started talking about Aunt Judy, we started talking about the fact that she truly lived to serve others. My Aunt Judy hated to cook, hated to cook. When she was 15 years old, her mother died of cancer, and her father wanted her to drop out of school and take care of her siblings. She was the oldest, and she had brothers and sisters. She did take care of them. She did not drop out of school, but she managed it all. And she cooked for them a lot. I remember going over to her house, and there was always like a chocolate cake or chili. There was always food that she had prepared. I did not know until her funeral that she hated cooking, hated it. But she did it because she loved family and she loved serving others. So that to me was who she was, someone who served others. I also learned at her house that when you play spoons, you take your rings off I don't know if you guys have ever played the game Spoons, but you have spoons. It's kind of like musical chairs, but you have spoons in the middle of the table and you pass cards around. And when somebody has four of a kind, they slowly reach for a spoon, and then everybody else piles on and grabs these spoons. And it can turn into a, my father actually broke one of Aunt Judy's tables once. I mean, it turns into a very physical game. So one of the other, so I learned you have to take your jewelry off because you can really do some damage. We've pulled people across tables. It gets physical. But I learned that my Aunt Judy was an extremely competitive person. She also was a bridge player, but like games, gambling, she loved family. She would do things that she hated for her family, like cook. But when cards were on the table, she didn't care if you were family or not, you were going down. Like, and this is who she was. One of the other things that I learned from my Aunt Judy, she had Crohn's disease before it was even named Crohn's disease. So that is a terrible disease of your bowel, your intestines. She had multiple experimental medications tried on her, multiple surgeries. She had basically very little intestine left, very little colon left, like all of that. And she never complained about it. She might have, like to her husband, but other than that, you never really heard her complain. She showed up to everything that she possibly could. She took good care of herself so that she lived to 82. She was resilient, and she was never victim of her circumstances. It just was. You deal with it and you move forward. So these are the things that I learned about like who she was. And it got me thinking. We did a recent thing during a team meeting where we said if someone was going to leave you personally a Google review, like what would you want them to say? You know the Google reviews that they leave about your business. Oh, hopefully you get 5 stars. Everybody was really friendly. They took good care of my pet. I felt like I was part of the family. Like those are the Google reviews you want. But if someone could leave you a personal Google review, what would you want them to say about you? Like, I don't want somebody to leave a Google review about me and say, oh, she's a mom, or oh, she's a business owner, or oh, she's a wife. Like, I want them to say, so we actually wrote down a little list for my team. I would like for them to leave me a Google review that says I'm helpful, I'm empathetic, I'm a good listener, I'm a problem solver, I'm kind, I'm funny, and I'm supportive. Like that's who I really try to be. And so when I guess my point of all of this is really looking at who do you want to be and what do you do to live into that personality when you die, because we're all going to die. What do you want them to say about you? Do you want them to just talk about what you did, who you were to other people? Or do you want them to give examples like that? Like, oh, Jenny was always supportive. Her door was always open. I knew if I went into her office, she was going to listen to me. I knew that she was always a problem solver because whenever I came to her, we sat down, she listened to me, and we came up with a solution. Like, that's who I want to be. So there are actions that you do to live into that personality. So those were my musings of, right, if somebody left you a Google review, what do you really want them to say? Like, I don't think anybody says, oh, I want them to say, oh, she was a victim. She complained about everything. When the computers break down, she always just lost her cool and came out with a hammer. I don't think anybody wants them to say that about you. And yet sometimes we find ourselves being the victim of our circumstances, feeling sorry for ourselves, complaining all the time. So I think, I don't know, what are your thoughts about what I just said? Like, who do you want to be and how do we live in that?
It's it's almost like I would liken it to like personal core values almost. Like
Yes.
similar to that. Like what are the core things about you that guide how you behave as a human that you want others to notice or that you want to basically be like your compass of how you behave as a person, which is a really interesting concept. Like a couple years ago we did a core values exercise with our practice, which we've done a couple times to make sure that we're still heading in the right direction and everyone agrees. But one of those times I was like, what would my personal core values be? And kind of sat down and did it as like an exercise for myself. And I, came up with some like my number one is actually adventure, just because I'm a very adventurous person and I like to travel. And adventure, I think, can mean so many things. Like I'm an entrepreneur, I started my own practice. That's an adventure of its own.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then like doing the right thing, kindness, things like that, like are sort of where mine go and where my brain goes. And being someone who's very genuine, and having a good sense of humor. Like if my Google review didn't mention that I'm funny, I'd be very sad.
I would too. Like devastated. You're
I'd
like,
be like, really? All those jokes and nothing? Come
you're like, I gotta
on.
get new material. I gotta
The
look up
frick.
what's the best dad joke out there right now. Like,
Uh, but it is an interesting concept to me because I also feel like so many people have this like idea of who they want to be and the type of footprint they want to leave, but then their like day-to-day actions are really not in align with that, which I think is sometimes what leads to some people being unhappy, maybe.
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like we could muse on and on about that, but it is interesting because I do feel like what people want to be and how they want to be perceived is often not how they like behave in those little interactions in the day to day, which is interesting to
right.
me.
Yeah. And I went to listening to Jenny and now listening to you, Beth, kind of is more where I was going is like, what are the headwinds of being who you want to be? And do you allow the headwinds to win? Or do you allow yourself to win? Right. And I was just having this conversation with somebody right before we hopped on the podcast. And I'm like, and their conversation was, gosh, I think I'm listening too much to the chatter out there and I'm feeling bad about myself. And I am now lost and I don't know where to go in my own direction. And I'm like, well, you can't listen to that. And it was about starting a business. And like when you're starting your own business, I say, yeah, it's hard. That's why a lot of people don't do it. And all three of us ladies have been in a business startup situation. And I'm like, you can't listen. Everything you need inside of yourself to be who you are and how you want to live today is in you. You're the expert on it. And I said, I'm not going to lie. Some days being yourself and what you want to do means you do it while you have tears running down your face
Mhm.
to stay true to yourself, right? Or stay true to your business idea and your concept. And even if somebody says, well, that's a really, crappy idea and I don't think you should do it, and judgment, 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 either about who you are personally, but each one of us have put our stamp of who we are in the culture of our businesses. We have said, no, this is how we're going to live today. This is what I believe, and this is what we're going to create. And I'm pretty sure I'm speaking for all three of us. Not every day was an easy day on that one.
It wasn't? Oh, everything was a piece of cake for me.
Yeah, with the birds singing.
Right.
Why are you
Oh,
lying? Why are you lying?
There was no problem that ever showed up where you landed on your desk or you opened a door and you just didn't say F it and turn around for
oh
a
my
minute
gosh.
and walk
Yeah.
back out and go, I need a hot second here, and
Yeah.
maybe a copious amount of chocolate. So
I think
Yeah.
it's interesting. So you just mentioned, Kelly, culture in your practice. And Beth, you talked about doing the values, right, with your practice. And we have done that too, where we sit down and we really hash them out. Not just like, what do we think our values are, but like define that. What does that mean? When you say, they wanted trustworthy to be one of our values, my team did. And I'm like, what does that mean? What are the actions that you can take? It might be something as simple as doing the dishes, do and not leaving them for someone else because you can take care of yourself, then they can trust you to clean up after yourself. Like it might be something simple like that. It might be something of not gossiping, right? A bigger
Mhm.
idea of that. But it's interesting because I think one of the things that we forget, and to your point, Kelly, about not listening to the chatter, right, is that we are in charge of who we are. We are in charge of the choices that we make. We are in charge of how we react. There are no outside circumstances that are going to make you happy. right? You have to pick that. You have to choose that. You have to follow that, right? You have to take those steps. And I think it's something that this is something that I've talked about with my team. You know, we made these Google reviews and they're all sticking up on my meeting area right now. And tomorrow we have a team meeting and I'm going to say, okay, how do you live in this? Because to just say the words doesn't matter. And it's so easy for us to say, oh, well, I want trustworthy to be a culture of, or a value of the team. But then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to gossip, you know, because you get caught up in it. And we all, I've said this to my team over and over again. Every single one of us is responsible for how the clinic runs that day. If I come in a bad mood, and I'm taking a hammer to my broken computer because that's what I feel like doing right now. If I do that, is everybody else going to be like, oh, great, today's going to be a great day? No, that is going to bring them down. But it's not just me as the owner. It's not just me as the practice manager. It's every single person. I don't care if you're the one folding the laundry or if you're the one doing CPR on a pet that has, you know, is run into the light to say hi to Jesus while they're on the, you know, surgery table. I don't care if you're the one that's answering the phone with that really angry client or if you're the one that's filling a prescription. Every single person, that job is important. Mopping the floors is important. Answering calls from clients is important. Being a doctor diagnosing that cushion-oid dog, that is important. But your attitude and what you do and the actions that you do are the things that actually dictate how the day goes and how you are perceived. So if you make this list, this Google list, if you say, Beth, you're funny, but you're not, and you
How
don't
dare
see,
you?
well, we just met. But if you don't, but like if someone comes to you and you don't see the humor in it, right? Like there are sometimes that I'm just like, okay, you just have to laugh, right? Because if you don't
Mhm.
laugh, you're going to cry. So let's just make the
Mhm.
best of it. That shows that you have a sense of humor. But
Yeah.
if you're not acting in that way and you want people to think you're funny, but your jokes are falling flat and everything is so serious to you,
Yeah.
then you're not really living in that value. You know,
Yeah.
if you say you want to be adventurous, but you're not willing to try the new medicine or the new surgical procedure or learn and take your team to learn so that you can all grow, are you really being adventurous? You know, maybe you're willing to, you know, go up in a hot air balloon like Kelly or, you know, jump out of a plane or whatever, float your boat. But are you really doing these things? So I think that it's our responsibility to not listen to that chatter and to say, how do I, like, what steps, what action steps can I do for me, not for the practice, not for my family, not for whatever else, but what can I do for me to live in these values?
And
And
I,
Yeah,
oh,
go ahead.
I was
go
just
ahead,
going
Kelly.
to add, is this generational too? You know, you're talking about your aunt who passed away around 82, 83,
Mm-hmm.
and she just did all the amazing things that you started this podcast with, right? And then there's us three ladies who are in a different phase of our life than the 82-year-old. You know, we're all moms, we're running businesses, we have considerations, we have people younger than us, we have people older than us that have going on. And we're willing to say, no, we're going to stop the chatter. And then you look at our kids and you look at all the social media influence and talk about chatter, right? And the influencers and how does that generation, and it's something I talk about with my daughter all the time, it pisses her off. She's like, can you just stop telling me what they're trying to sell me? And I'm like, yeah, no, I can't. Really.
No, because I'm right.
Yeah, because I want you to think for yourself, and I just don't want you to simulate this message, which may or may not be true, and watch your behavior tank because
Mhm.
you're comparing yourself to somebody who's artificial, who may not even be real. And, you know, I'm like, whatever they're showing you, I can absolutely tell you a mom of 10 people cannot have a household run like that. That is not possible. Like they have extra help in the background. I'm just saying for real, wait until you're a mom, like just using that as example. But learning to shut off the chatter of people around us and and even now that extra layer for people who are really engaged in social media, regardless of ages, but it's slanted to the younger. How do you say no?
Yeah. And I think so much of what holds people back, either from pursuing the thing that might make them happy or living their true to themselves life, is fear. Like fear of failure, fear of people judging you, fear of people not liking you, fear of not being good at what you're going to do, like whatever, all those fears that pile on top of you. And that is one of the things that I think social media has been like good and bad about, because it does allow us to celebrate people's successes, but it also provides such an outlet for comparison that I think is really hard. And I think that's harder for like the younger generation too, because they are more susceptible to that. Like, I think as you get older, you sort of naturally gain, I'm sorry, my dogs are looking. Um, I think as you get older, you kind of naturally gain more confidence through life experiences, right? Like then you'll have gone through, like it's so much easier to feel good in a situation if you've done it before, you've seen it before. Whereas the first time you're going through something, it feels a lot worse, it feels a lot harder. And so those life experiences add so much confidence that like even as a practice owner, how I behave in difficult situations right now is so different than even 5 years ago, because I've been through so much more freaking nonsense
Right.
that like now I'm even more confident dealing with those things. And so I think the older you get, that's why you kind of naturally get better at being yourself. Like this, I think ties into the whole like why people have a midlife crisis. It's because they like realize midlife, I'm not living the life I want to. And they're finally at a point where maybe they can admit that and then pursue something that would make them happier, or that is then speaking to their true self a little bit better than maybe their life before that was.
I think you just hit on something there, Beth, about the fact that we look for a catalyst. We look
Mhm.
for something to force us to change or open our eyes. And until then, we're just living
Mhm.
this kind of monotonous, same thing everyday life. And I think, so I, now I'm going to get personal because my brother actually came up to the funeral, or down to the funeral, wherever he lives, outside of Toledo, Ohio. And I said, "How are you?" My brother and I don't talk very much. Like, we don't talk on the phone. We'll text each other, but it's not communication. I'm like, "Tell me everything. I want to know everything. Tell me about your life." And he's like, "I don't know. I kind of just do the same thing every day." And you could see how like tired he seemed, and how just like the weight of the world was on his shoulder. And I'm like, "Well, then do something about it." you know and he's just like, well, but it's so easy. It's very easy to just stay in your rut. I think Peter says it all the time. There's a huge difference between a rut and a grave, or not a huge difference between a rut and a grave. And it's real close to, you're just stuck there. And so I think we all spend so much time waiting for this catalyst to change who we are. A lot of people do it first of January. This is the year. This is the year I'm going to work out, and I'm going to do these. I'm going to take the trip. I'm going to, and it's like we use that day as a catalyst, or our birthdays as a catalyst, or something. And at some point you just have to say, okay, I'm done waiting, and I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to take the chance. I'm going to live the best life that I know how to live, and truly be who I want to be. And I think that we need to stop waiting for the chances now, the chances today, the chances. I mean, it's not like one day we woke up and went, boy, I think I'll start a business, and I'm just gonna, yep, today's it. We put planning and stuff into it, but we were taking steps towards it the whole time. I remember my
Mhm.
husband was in vet school, and he said, "Jenny, I want to own my own practice one day." And I was like, ugh, he's not going to be good at business. God bless him. He's a great vet. So I went and I changed my major to take, marketing and advertising and economics, and, things that I knew would come in then, before computers, how to make a brochure, like that kind of stuff. Because we were already trying to put the steps in place. I wasn't just going to wait for some moment. And then it just so happened that we had a child, and went, oh, let's start a business at the exact same moment. And that's what we did. But we don't have to wait for a catalyst to to live in our best life, to live up to our values, to sit down and come up with our values. Some people haven't even put the thought into that. I mean, how many people have really sat down and go, what do I stand for?
Mhm.
Like, who am I? And
Versus
I,
reacting to what they hear
right.
from them, right?
Right.
Like some people I can almost tell what news channels they follow because what they parrot back to me. And I'm like, yeah, but is that what you believe? Like, I don't
Right.
care what you believe as a human being. I'm not one of those who gets all judgy about somebody else. The fascinating part for me is the parroting because I'm like, I'm okay if that's what you really think, but did you actually really think? Or are you just mirroring back other conversations you've heard and didn't assimilate it, process, and go, yeah, I really do think the sky is blue today. So I'm going to say, I really believe the sky is blue today, and I'm okay with that. Right. And that's what they come back with. And so, when I get bored, I just start watching people, especially in airports, and I start
Oh,
listening to chatter around me. I mean, come on, we've all been there, right?
that's the
And
best place to watch people.
It really is. It is.
it's really good, and because they don't realize you're watching them either. And then you like see family units and you see couples coming through and you see workers coming through, and you're like, huh. And then you also see in stressful moments how people handle stressful moments on the airplane. Some of them are better than others. And you're like, thank God I'm not sitting next to that person because they're losing their minds. Right. But kind of what you were saying, Jenny, was interesting. So my father died, like, I don't know, I'm losing track, 7, 8 years ago. Time gets mushy as these things go. And I was sitting with him, and my dad and I had a rocky relationship. So all of a sudden, was left to babysit him. My mom and brother went to the airport, and I'm thinking, I'd rather go to the airport. Why am I stuck with dad? Right. And he had dementia. It was interesting. In the middle of the brain, when you look at a CAT scan, he was a radiologist. So I looked at a lot of CAT scans, went to work with dad. You have the butterfly in the middle of the human brain, right? Dad had an empty hole that was about the size you could put a potato in, literally. So that part of his brain was gone with dementia. He had processing dementia, which means, and we found out after he died, it's a new thing that if you ask him to put A to B together, like how to install a battery and replace a battery, he couldn't do that. But all his memories in life were still intact. So I'm saying this because he turned to me and said, I can't believe as a woman, you got up and went and traveled around the world. And you went and did that as a woman, which was one of the conflict points because obviously I'm like, thanks for the sport, Dad. But he could not believe that I had the initiative to be adventurous and just say, yeah, let's go to China on my honeymoon. Yeah, let's go to that. Let's make it work. I didn't have any kids. I have a different opinion now of where I will go because I'm responsible for a child. But before that, I had a lot more like get up and go to different areas because I wanted to see what how the rest of the world live, because we only have 350 or 80 million people in the United States and 8 billion people on the planet. So we don't have all the answers. Let me go see what the rest was. But the opinion that he just turned out of blue, looked at me square in the face and said, I can't believe you did this, was made me kind of proud that I actually did.
Especially with someone thinking that you shouldn't.
Yes. Who was a parental figure and who
Right.
tried to stop me numerous times, like in hallways where nobody else can hear. Kelly, you can't go here. Why not? Well, because you're going to die. No, I think I'll be okay. Literally, but it's those chattering things that interestingly come up on deathbeds, right? Or come out around the ending points of life where conversations happen that couldn't happen before. It gives you a moment to think, like your aunt made you think, Jenny, about Google reviews and how you want to be remembered. How am I doing? Is it the way I want to live today? Am I okay with that? Is there something
Yeah.
I need to change?
And I do think there's an alarming number of people that probably don't even know who they want to be or how they want to be remembered because, like you were talking about, Kelly, they have a hard time because there is so much chatter telling them who they should be, or people giving opinions of what should be important or how you should be perceived, blah, 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 that to like sit with it quietly by yourself and like really look inside is also scary. And a lot of people don't like to do that, like being alone with my thoughts. Ugh. So
Right.
that is something that I think, you know, kind of going back to the beginning of this conversation, like more people should do, because if you know who you want to be and who you truly are inside, like that really should help guide your life and guide it in all aspects, whether it's personal or professional, in your business, with your coworkers, with your family, like all of that should be very interchangeable because it should be the same person across the board. And when you're truly living within your own core values, I think it is easy to do the same thing across the board. But when people run into trouble at work versus at home or whatever, I think it's because they're not being true to themselves, really.
Well, I think too, to what you were saying is if you know who you are, you can cut out that chatter.
Mhm.
Like you
Yeah.
don't care anymore. I don't need to listen to what, like, I know that not everybody likes me. I'm totally fine with that. I don't care. It was interesting. We were just in Vegas at Western, and I took two of my team members. And when you're in Vegas, you see, talk about people watching. Good Lord. Like you see the gamut of people, desperation, and yeah, a dude dressed like Elmo with his head off smoking. It's like, wow. But anyways, it was interesting because we're walking around, and I I don't really judge people. Like, you do you. It's not up to me. The team members that I'm with were 10 and 20 years younger than me. Um, and man, I finally was like, good Lord, you guys are judgy. They're like, I would never wear that. Oh, but it's funny because I came to the conclusion that they don't have a lot of self-confidence. And like, they're always like, oh, do I look, how do I look in this? How do I, oh, how are people going to perceive me in this outfit? Or when I do, and I'm like, the reason that you have low self-confidence because you're busy judging everybody else and you think they're judging you. I don't care. I don't care. I don't judge people, and I don't really care if they're judging me. I don't assume that they are even thinking about me because I'm not thinking about them. Like, it does come somewhat with age. I think a lot of it comes with um if you've done that work. How secure are you in who you are? I know some people have been in toxic relationships and they're told, maybe not positive things, and they start to believe that, and it's hard to fight against that, but you can make be this person that you want to be. You can make that and say, I don't want to be judgy anymore, and so I'm not going to. And kind of mentally smack yourself when you start being like, damn, that's
Or
what you chose to
physically.
wear, right? Or physically. Well, yeah, okay, no violence, but no. Maybe you can smack yourself, but don't smack others when they
Yes,
stop it.
I think
But
that's fine.
yeah, that's okay, right? But it's interesting because I think that we look to so much external to tell us who we are, to tell us what makes us happy. You have to be successful, you have to make money, you have to do whatever. To what you were saying, Kelly, about right, a house of 10 children is not going to be neat. Before we got on here, I cleaned up everything here. If I turn my camera here, there's like barely room for the microphone because it's a hot mess, because I'm a hot mess, but I wanted to present myself a certain way. But but that's what we don't, what's behind the camera? What's behind their brains? What are these other people thinking? Stop worrying about them. Mel Robbins, have you guys read the Let Them?
Oh my God, I'm in the middle of it. It is so good. I
Right?
almost brought it up, but I felt like it needed its own podcast.
It could. We should do Let Them
Yes.
theory. I am
I'm in the middle
telling
of it.
you.
It is amazing.
It is life changing.
So
And there's
good.
no one that I can think of at any point in their life that shouldn't be reading or listening to this book. And
Agreed.
it is about that. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people, just you let them, and then let me do my own thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, okay, we gotta, Kelly, write that down for an idea because
Yes.
we have to do a podcast about the let them theory because it is
Yes.
truly
So good.
liberating.
Yeah. I'm only halfway through the book and I feel like it's helping me
I
already.
think I only have a couple chapters left and I almost don't want to finish it. But she
I know
has a
it's good.
podcast, so you can listen, you got to listen to our
Mm.
podcast, but then listen to hers too.
So let's round it up, ladies. We've had
Okay.
a couple of really good moments here, I think. And I think, we started with Google left, if somebody left you a Google review, what would it say? And have you thought about what you wanted to say? Because we also said, a lot of people probably haven't had a peaceful hot minute and went inside and said, well, what would be the words, right? So we have to kind of set aside time, mental space, and go, okay. And then, and another piece off of that was, am I okay with what I want it to be? Am I in alignment with it? If I say I'm these 5 things, am I doing those 5 things in everyday actions, right? So there's a continuity there. If you're a business owner, like the 3 of us are, do we have those items in alignment with how we want to live in our professional environment? If you're an employee or working with somebody, do you bring a work persona to the table? Or do you bring your true self to the table? Are you okay with, if you have a work persona, are you okay with that division? Or do you want it to be more equal? Which then brings up the idea, are you working in the right job? So it all starts, the truth all starts, which is a whole nother podcast, but it starts with, do you know who you are? And I'm just paraphrasing what we talked about today. That's all. So do we know who you are? And are you living the way you are inside of you?
Yeah, I think the Google review idea sounded a lot better than a eulogy. Like, I think if you say, how do you want people to talk about you at your funeral? That's a little depressing. So
That
instead
is.
you say, what is my personal Google review? Like, and I got that idea actually from my BI rep, Art, who came up with this idea of personal Google reviews. And he actually was the one who came and presented it to my team. So, you can get ideas everywhere. But it just sounds so much better than, so when you're dead, how
But
do you
you
want
can't
people to
change
remember
things
you?
when you're dead. When you
Right.
have a Google review today, you
Yeah.
still theoretically have some runway left in your life to make those changes. I mean, we
Right.
could all be hit by a bus tomorrow. We don't know these things, but let's just say theoretically, we have a little bit of a window there to make personal changes,
Right.
right?
And we can try and make things right if we maybe weren't living in ourselves with somebody and we know we screwed up. You have an opportunity still to make that right, try and be better. Take the
Yeah.
chance, don't be afraid, all of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Be afraid and do it anyway.
Right.
Yes. Be brave. That's being brave.
So
Good.
whoever's listening to this today, you have 3 ladies who have walked this path ourselves. And not only walked it, are walking it. It's nothing that there's an end destination. Every day is a new day. And so you just have to constantly live your life that way. How do you want to live today? Right? So we're cheerleading you on.
Yeah.
Come to future shows and listen to more of our chatter, not telling you how to be, but encouraging you to be who you should be. And that's whoever you want to be inside of yourself. So we will give the royal unfiltered way of goodbye. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to having a moment with you in the future. Until later.